Tonight on The Quiet Loud, we're looking at something you can feel in the air, even before you can fully name it. A shift, a tremor, a movement that once moved in perfect lockstep, suddenly wobbling as its leader insists, louder and louder, that everything is fine, he's fine, his mind is fine, his control is fine. But if everything were fine, he wouldn't have to keep telling us. This week we saw signs everywhere. In Congress, in the courts, in conservative media, in leaked emails, and even in how the President of the United States talks about his own brain. You can see a coalition sensing weakness. You can see his most loyal people starting to step back. And you can see a country asking a question it should have asked 9 years ago. What exactly is going on with this president? And we'll get into all that. The fracturing MAGA base, the judicial rebellions, the Epstein Files bombshells, and even ICE activity right here in North Carolina. But first, before things get heavy, we're going to start where this episode truly begins. With the moment the internet realized something is off about the man who keeps insisting he's got the best brain. And welcome to The Quiet Loud. If you're watching on YouTube, take a second to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an episode. Now, let's get into the whisper. Something is wrong with this president, and more people are beginning to notice. For the last week, the White House has been trying and failing to explain why Donald Trump needed a second annual physical, why he suddenly received an MRI on an undisclosed part of his body, and why he's now obsessed with bragging about acing what he keeps calling a very difficult IQ test. And now you can too. Check this out.
Let's do it together, shall we? And see how you score. The first 3 questions are the ones he says are the easiest. There's a visual spatial pattern recognition test. Draw a cube, draw a clock, and then identify these 3 animals. You get 1 point for each that you get correct. Now the next set of questions, according to Kanks, is where it starts to get really challenging. According to the President of the United States, who has access to the codes, these questions are challenging. Feel free to keep score for yourself if you want. Question number 1. Remember these words for later on in the test. Face, velvet, church, daisy, red. Question number 2. Repeat these numbers in forward order. 2, 1, 8, 5, 4. Repeat these numbers in backwards order. 7, 4, 2. You get 1 point for each of those that you got correct. Question number 3. Tap your hand for each time you hear the letter A. F, B, A, C, M, N, A, J, K, L, B, A, F, A. If you had less than 2 mistakes, you get 1 point. Question number 4. Serial subtract 7 starting from 100. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to answer that. Serial subtract from 7, 93, 86, 79, 72, 65. If you got 4 or 5 of those correct, you get 3 points. If you got 2 or 3 of those correct, you get 2 points. If you got 1 of those correct, you get 1 point. If you didn't get any of them correct, you got 0 points. Repeat these statements back to me. I only knew that John is the one to help today. Statement number 2. The cat always hides under the couch when the dogs are in the room. Get 1 point for each of those that you got correct. 6. Name as many F words under 1 minute that you can. I'm not going to give you 1 minute because that's ridiculous. You can either do it or you can't do it. If you could do 11 in under 1 minute, you get 1 point. Name the similarities between these 2 items. Train, bicycle, watch, ruler. Again, you either know you got the right answer or you didn't. 1 point for each. Number 8, recall those 5 words that I gave you at the beginning of the test. Those 5 words were face, velvet, church, daisy, red. You get 1 point for each of those that you remembered correct. The last question of the test is, tell me the date, month, year, day, and then the place and city that you're in. You get 1 point for each of those that you got correct.
So clearly, it wasn't an IQ test. It was a dementia screening, given when doctors are worried when someone is declining. This is the same test behind the meme that launched 1,000 parodies. You remember from the debates person, woman, man, camera, TV. And just to be clear, this is not a joke about dementia or cognitive loss. These are serious conditions affecting millions of families. These tests matter. They help people. However, the danger is that the president keeps treating I passed a dementia screen like he won a Pulitzer or decoded quantum physics. We're going to talk about what it means when a leader is this consumed with proving just how sharp he is. At the exact same moment, his movement, his judges, and even his closest allies are quietly pulling away. And that's where the whisper ends and the quiet countdown begins. This week, the United States Senate did something almost unimaginable in this political climate. They passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act by unanimous consent, not one single objection. Not one. This follows the House's vote of 427-1 to release the records. And for a brief moment, Congress spoke with one voice and said there's no need to hide this anymore. But the story didn't end with that vote. Almost immediately, while this was going on, a tranche of nearly 20,000 plus emails surfaced from a whistleblower. Messages featuring messages between Jeffrey Epstein and his brother Mark. And they talked about whether Vlad, and we know who Vlad is, had a compromising photo of Donnie T. And we know who Donnie T is. And the description was so specific, so bizarre, come on, so explosive. You got to check these out. That even hardened investigators had to take a second look. One email references a picture involving somebody named Bubba. Now, it's already kind of been debunked that the Bubba they were referencing was President Bill Clinton. Now, we all know, most of us that came up during the 90s knew that that was a way that people referred to President Bill Clinton, as Bubba. But we're coming to find out that this Bubba may refer to some Russian person. I'm just going to leave that there. You guys can do a little bit more research. I don't want to delve too deep into this particular minutia, okay? But they are musing about whether or not Vlad has of an act that Donnie T is doing to Bubba. Y'all check that out, okay? Another describes Trump in a situation Epstein himself called a liability. And suddenly, the same Republicans who championed transparency started shifting into procedural language, talking about, quote, timelines and redaction processes and protecting reputations. Because here's the truth. Mike Johnson only supported the bill once it was inevitable. Trump only supported it after the House made it impossible to oppose. He tried, even after holding off Representative Adelita Grijalva for weeks, for over a month, and then trying to get some other people to pull their names down off the discharge petition, and were not able to do it. Then they turned around and announced their support. But both men, according to reporting and sources, they fully intended to let the bill die quietly or try to cripple or kill it in the Senate. Because transparency isn't a threat. Exposure is. Okay? And this time the exposure may reach farther than anyone expected. Because the Senate has already prepared to send it to the president's desk. Now, I am worried about some sabotage here. Let's be honest. It seems that the House and the Senate have done their jobs and are sending this to the president, but there are still some loopholes. There are still some ways that the White House can circumvent having to, or the DOJ can circumvent having to release these files, at least the complete files. If you've noticed, you've seen that President Trump has ordered the Justice Department to go after some of the Democrats who could be found within these files and in these emails. So guess what? If these files are being swept up in some kind of investigation, then they won't be able to release them. You see what I mean? So the game's afoot. You guys keep an eye on that. Watch this space. Okay? Now let's talk about the fractures within the Republican base. Fractures that reveal how shaky Trump's control has become. Marjorie Taylor Greene, once one of Trump's most loyal warriors, is now being blasted by him as wacky, as crazy, and as a traitor. Marjorie Traitor Greene, he calls us now. The first nickname he called her was completely ridiculous. I mean, this one's no better, but it does have a better ring to it. Her crime refusing to drop her demands that the Epstein Files be released. Trump called her dangerous. And Green says Trump is lying about her and provoking death threats against her in the process. And we've seen how rabid that base can be. So, as I've said before and I will say again, I totally am against all forms of political violence. For once in her life, Marjorie Taylor Greene is starting to sound principled in some way, some fashion. She's trying to be accountable, it seems, to her constituency. So there's a temporary alignment of what she wants and what Democrats are looking for. Representative Thomas Massey was another Trump allied or Trump aligned figure. And he's publicly accused Trump of using selective investigations into Democrats as a smokescreen to avoid full transparency. This is what I was talking about before. Okay, they'll find a way to not have to fully release these files. Mike Johnson, meanwhile, is pretending to support the release while quietly maneuvering to protect Trump, which he always does. Okay, this guy's not the speaker. He is the president's assistant. He's the president's errand boy. Okay? It's just shameful. But this isn't the first Republican to break with Trump. It's just the first to break from the MAGA wing itself. Remember, back in Trump's first administration, the first wave of dissent, okay? John McCain, whose late night vote protected health care for millions. That thumbs down vote he did literally saved their largest attempt to try and repeal and defund the Affordable Care Act. I know you'll recall Liz Cheney, who risked her seat, her career, and her safety to expose the January 6th conspiracy. Then you have Adam Kinzinger, who sacrificed his political future to challenge Trump's abuse of power. Not to mention the 10 House Republicans and 7 Senate Republicans who voted to impeach him, one of the 2 times or both. Those were institutional resistors. Now this new wave, Green and Massey and others, this is the ideological resistors. MAGA loyalists turning on their MAGA leader. That only happens when a movement begins to suspect its leader might not be strong enough to carry its ambitions any further. The cracks are widening and the dam is beginning to hum. So next up, let's talk judiciary. Because the courts, including courts Trump personally shaped, are now openly pushing back against him. A federal 3-judge panel composed largely of Republican appointees struck down a Texas gerrymander designed to favor Trump-aligned candidates, calling it unconstitutional and an affront to the Voting Rights Act. In Nevada, the state Supreme Court unanimously revived criminal charges against 6 fake electors who signed fraudulent certificates claiming Trump had won that state. Now, Trump pardoned several of them federally. This was just recently. But those pardons mean nothing in state court. So those trials are coming. And we'll keep that, we'll keep following up on that news as it happens. And then there's the Lindsay Halligan story. Halligan, Trump-connected attorney, is now facing allegations of misconduct in the way she secured the indictment of James Comey. It's misconduct that includes pressure tactics and improper evidence handling and conflicts of interest that could collapse the entire case. Even conservative legal voices are calling it a catastrophic ethical breach. Meanwhile, Trump has launched coordinated attacks against federal judges, calling them corrupt, traitors, and enemies of the people. Sounds familiar, right? Anybody who doesn't agree with him suddenly becomes an enemy of the people. But something has changed, though. The judges are talking back. Chief Justice John Roberts rebuked Trump for trying to intimidate courts. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson warned that targeting judges undermines constitutional order. Multiple Republican-appointed judges have condemned the rhetoric as dangerous, and the rulings reflect that new resolve. Cases Trump thought he controlled are starting to slip away. Legal allies are fracturing, and the courts he once believed were his last line of protection are now proving they're still courts and not his shields. This is institutional independence now reasserting itself, I hope. This is balance of power, separations of power, checks and balances happening in real time. Okay? And it's happening at the exact moment his political base is starting to wobble. And now let's get into the cultural core of all this. the movement itself. The Tucker Carlson-Nick Fuentes interview detonated the conservative ecosystem. Ben Shapiro blasted Carlson for normalizing Nazism and accused him of indulging extremist ideology instead of challenging it. Heritage Foundation leadership defended Tucker, prompting mass resignations from its own anti-Semitism task force, its Jewish staff, and allied organizations. A movement that once defined itself by unity is now fighting over its identity in front of the entire country. And add that to Trump's own humiliating missteps, like telling Laura Ingraham that the United States needs Chinese workers because Americans don't have the skills. This is a man whose base believes that they are forgotten patriotic Americans. And he's telling them publicly that foreign workers are more capable than they are. Combine that with medical questions, the cognitive test obsession, the MRI secrecy, the impeachment uproar from his own former supporters, the judges resisting him, the Senate Republicans distancing themselves from him, and you see a movement that is no longer orbiting cleanly around just one man. Some are moving toward a more extreme future, which we need to keep our eye on. Some are trying to course correct back to a traditional conservatism. Some are hedging their political bets, and some, especially in Congress, are just trying to survive. These are the ones keeping their heads down, that are voting with Trump every which way they can, but realizing what are deal breakers for their own base, and then breaking with him where necessary. But the common thread is clear. The gravitational pull of Donald Trump is getting weaker. And the movement he built is trying to figure out what happens with or without him. And with that brings us to one last thing. So tonight's one last thing hits home for me, literally, because ICE is operating aggressively right now in North Carolina this week, conducting coordinated enforcement actions across multiple counties. These operations are reportedly concentrated in Wake County, Durham County, Mecklenburg County, Johnston County, and pockets of Guilford County, meaning Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, and surrounding areas. Witnesses have reported unmarked vehicles, early morning detentions near apartment complexes, and targeted workplace visits. Legal organizations confirm that ICE agents are asking for names, identification, and immigration statuses at traffic stops, something that citizens are not legally required to disclose for real. So here's what you need to know if you live in North Carolina or anywhere where ICE is active. Now, I'm no lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice, okay? But it is important to kind of know your rights, all right? You don't have to open the door unless agents have a signed warrant with your correct name and address on it. You have the right to stay quiet. You have the right to remain silent, okay? Always. You have the right to refuse consent to a search. You have the right to record ICE encounters. Now, from a safe distance, because they'll try to say that you're impeding. You don't want to get into that. We've seen how that works, in video footage all across the country. Please stay safe. Document, but stay safe. Okay? We don't want anyone else getting swept up in what they're doing here, but we do need that documentation for posterity, okay? We do. And you have the right to contact a lawyer. If you or someone you know needs help, information for local orgs are in the show notes right now. Go and check those out. Okay? Local orgs, and as well as some information for national organizations. Okay? Community safety happens when communities share information, when they stay alert, and when they refuse to be intimidated. From what we're seeing, ICE relies on fear, but our knowledge is our power. So that's it for tonight's episode of The Quiet Loud. If this helped you make sense of this week, show some love to the algorithm, please. Like, subscribe, comment, and share this with someone who needs context more than chaos. And if you want to go one step further, contact your local representatives and demand accountability for judicial intimidation and voter suppression. Volunteer with a local democracy group, immigrant rights organization, mutual aid network, or voting rights nonprofit. Because democracy doesn't defend itself. We all do. So as always, I'm going to ask you to be loud in your listening and to be real in your truth. I'm DeAnthony Collins, and this has been The Quiet Loud. Y'all take care.